escalation of artificial indebtedness, which only puts us at ever greater disadvantage. So this is characteristic, this denial, this seeming obvious lie. It's the same kind of lie he's telling you now when he's saying vital, while their employment statistics actually only indicate an increase in employment because it fails to account for how many people have simply fallen off the unemployment rolls for being unemployed for so long. He's telling you this is evidence of recovery. Of course, it's not evidence of recovery. It's not even comprehensive. He himself confesses in his very admission of the facts that this purported recovery is projected from this obviously falsified data, purposely downwardly skewed data, which is meant to deceive us. So this is just characteristic. There's nothing to be surprised by the fact that these people are constantly lying to us. The thing for us to do, always, is to look at the things around us and determine the lie from the lie itself. Why would he say what he said? In order to protect this purported Federal Reserve System, which is neither federal nor even a reserve of anything, which is a system set up completely with the sole purpose of exploitation. Why would he do anything but protect it if he's part of it, you see? So all of this is just mundane, generic deceptions which we should readily see through.
One of the 6 Federal Reserve Board governors serving under Bernanke was Frederick Mishkin, who was appointed by President Bush in 2006.
Did you participate in these semi-annual meetings that Robert Gneizda and Greenlining had with the Federal Reserve Board?
Yes, I did. I was actually on the committee that was involved with the Consumer and Community Affairs Committee.
He warned in an extremely explicit manner about what was going on, and he came to the Federal Reserve Board with loan documentation of the kind of loans that were frequently being made, and he was listened to politely and nothing was done.
Right.
But again, we can expect nothing different, because unless we rectify the Federal Reserve System, that is, we eliminate it, we get it out of the picture, we get exploitation out of the picture and rectify economy and mathematically perfected economy, which we can transition to immediately by merely refinancing all our debts without interest, counting all prior payments of interest toward principal, and subjecting the remaining balance, if any, to our obligatory schedule of payment at no less than the rate of consumption or depreciation of the related property. Then and then alone do we solve all our problems. We solve them just as easily as that. So we can't expect these preposterous deceivers to represent us, because they actually are installed to represent those who are against us. Nonetheless, still, we can't expect to ask a board, which is by inherent nature disposed against us, to somehow oversee a process differently somehow, which process can only multiply artificial indebtedness into terminal indebtedness, which process can only compromise creditworthiness to an ever greater degree, until, of course, if you're going to be making any loans, and you have to be making ever escalating sums of loans merely to maintain a vital circulation, but if you are, you're going to be doing so to ever more compromised creditworthiness. This is an inevitable consequence of the obfuscation of the currency.
So I don't know the details in terms of in fact, I just don't. Whatever information he provided, I'm not sure exactly. It's actually, to be honest with you, I can't remember this kind of discussion, but certainly there were issues that were coming up. But then the question is, how pervasive are they?
Why didn't you try looking?
Let's be serious here. The issue is not whether they look, The issue is that their very job is to deceive us that the consequences of the system aren't adverse to us. So even if they turn something like this up, it's preposterous to think that their disposition would ever be to expose it to us. So it's not about reporting on themselves, tattling for the misdeeds, all of which are inherent, ramifications of this obfuscation of the currency.
I think that people did. We have people look. We had a whole group of people looking at this for whatever reason.
You can't be serious. If you would have looked, you would have found things.
That's very, very easy to always say that you can always find it.
As early as 2004, the FBI was already warning about an epidemic of mortgage fraud. They reported inflated appraisals, doctored loan documentation, and other fraudulent activity.
To review then, let's just go over a couple of these things really quickly. Doctored appraisals. Why would you inflate the value of things? Number one, to make the greatest amount of profit possible. Number two, because you have to loan more money into circulation merely to sustain this system. Why are you falsifying creditworthiness? Because creditworthiness is inherently destroyed so that people cannot, really truly, be creditworthy to borrow further, particularly in the later stages of the system.
In 2005, the IMF's chief economist, Raghuram Rajan, warned that dangerous incentives could lead to a crisis.
But even this is only as if someone is looking out for us, because what does the IMF do? It likewise imposes these systems of terminal dispossession upon every subject country.
Then came Nouriel Roubini's warnings in 2006, Alan Sloan's articles in Fortune magazine and the Washington Post in 2007, and repeated warnings from the IMF.
I say that on behalf of the institution, the crisis which is in front of us is a huge crisis.
Who did you talk to?
The government, Treasury, Fed, everybody.
In May of 2007, hedge fund manager Bill Ackman circulated a presentation called Who's Holding the Bag?, which described how the bubble would unravel.
Obviously, however, unless this presentation treated the underlying root cause of the failure, which precipitates in all these on all this deterioration of debt, obviously it could only expose the superficial ramifications, which of course is what this review is all about. The fact that if we were so disposed to simply consider outlawing alleged superficial improprieties without rectifying the system from the root, there's no way at all that we can actually resolve our issues.
And in early 2008, Charles Morris published his book about the impending crisis.
You're just not sure, what do you do? And you might have some suspicions that underwriting standards are being weakened, but then the question is, should you do anything about it?
Not at all. The only real question is whether we're pretending to do anything about it if we pretend to retain or impose further standards which somehow rectify, which can only be caused by this root obfuscation of the currency.
By 2008, home foreclosures were skyrocketing, and the securitization food chain imploded. Lenders could no longer sell their loans to the investment banks, and as the loans went bad, dozens of lenders failed.
But again then, did the loans go bad as a consequence of a compromisation of creditworthiness standards, or did they go bad because of the underlying obfuscation of the currency?
Chuck Prince of Citibank famously said that we have to dance until the music stops. Actually, the music had stopped already when he said that.
What he's just said actually translates to an inadvertent admission that we've actually entered upon this terminal phase of the system. Music has stopped. And the collapse of these, what I call, of long called peripheral banks, is different than the central bank. The peripheral banks purportedly borrow this obfuscation of the currency. It's not borrowing at all, from the central bank, and they're obliged to pay it back to the central bank whilst this obfuscation of the currency is multiplied artificial indebtedness into terminal indebtedness, which exceeds our capacity to service debt. Therefore, they fail when we fail. And so the fact that they fail doesn't mean that the banks are somehow the purported banks are somehow able to survive the very conditions that they precipitate in. These peripheral banks merely act as instruments of perpetrating this facade that money is actually borrowed into circulation, and so they fail. But the central bank, theoretically, it could only fail if it was so mismanaged that all its far vaster income than is ever admitted to us was somehow lost in engaging in the worst propositions that we could possibly imagine, which just isn't likely the case.
The market for CDOs collapsed, leaving the investment banks holding hundreds of billions of dollars in loans, CDOs, and real estate they couldn't sell.
But what, after all, are we tolerating such entities selling such things for in the first place? What can this do but deprive us of just reward for our production when if there is any profit to be had from doing this, it's unearned because these entities produce nothing, and it comes from the same pool of wealth, therefore depriving us of just reward for our own doings. So it's preposterous that that we tolerate at the mutual exclusion of a possibility of true free enterprise this practice of unearned taking in the first place. But on the other hand, this is the fact that they may engage in selling such instruments, and in other words, evidences of debt, is a further ramification or consequence of this obfuscation of the currency. What, after all, are you going to do if it becomes apparent to you that the numbers just aren't going to work out, that you're not going to collect on these debts? Of course, you don't divulge to who you might sell them to relieve yourself of failure. You don't tell the full details of the improbable circumstances under which you're unloading them. And obviously you're unloading them for a reason. So this all just results in, this overrating of the quality of these debts. And that's not the issue. The issue is that the quality is inherently destroyed. That is, our ability to service them is inherently destroyed by the obfuscation of the currency, which perpetually multiplies ever further sums of artificial, falsified indebtedness upon us.
When the crisis started, both the Bush administration and the...
From just this much, we know we're going to hear a lie. The crisis doesn't start at the brink of terminal failure. The crisis begins in the very beginning of the life cycle of the system. In the beginning, the circulation equals the principal which has been loaned into circulation. Thereafter, the sum of artificial indebtedness to the purported banking system, the central banking system, increases at an ever-escalating rate.